to 18-inch goddamn arms day. Today's the 17th September. I started on August 8th. 23 and 17. I think we got day 40. Day 40. Beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous day here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. Winter is on the horizon. Things are going to get absolutely crispified soon, but I think we're going to hit 30 today, so enjoy it while it lasts. Just going to do a couple of hip stretches here. Today is arm day, the heavy day, so I'm going to be pushing heavy weight with a fast, explosive tempo, resting long, rest period 6 minutes at least, supersetted. And we worked up to the 110-pound dumbbell on the overheads for triceps, and for biceps, the 50-pound dumbbells. But if you've watched some of the previous episodes, you would have seen that I've been kind of humming and hawing about lowering the weight for biceps, increasing the weight. With the hammer curls specifically, with a fast, explosive tempo, it's a bit tricky to get it so that the tension is on your biceps and you're not swinging, because as you push to max intensity, that becomes a bit of a blurred line. So I keep kind of checking myself, like, okay, I'm getting stronger, I'll up the weight, and the form is getting too much. Given when I'm doing the sets, as you'll see, a lot of times my eyes are closed and I'm just like going to war. So it's hard to keep track of like how much am I swinging my hips, how much of this am I keeping in my biceps, because ideally you don't want the weight to go up just because you're using more momentum. You want the weight to go up because the target muscle is getting stronger, in this case your biceps. So it's a good thing to be aware of as you like try to progress your weight, is to not have the progressions come from your form getting shittier. Anyway, so that's the day today. As usual, I loosen up my hips because a lot of the issues I have in my shoulders and my chest stems from the hips and obviously the ankle. Well, not obviously, but I broke my ankle. It didn't heal correctly. That causes imbalance in your lower extremities, and then everything is connected, so that's then going to cause imbalance into your back, your core, all the way up into your shoulders, your neck, etc. And this is kind of top of mind because a recent short form post I made on Instagram and TikTok is getting quite a lot of attention for not the right reasons, really. Well, a lot of people are hating. Some of it's fair. The post is kind of provocative on purpose. It's just shots of my physique, and I'm just talking about, I put text on it saying how like I've seen gains, or like my whole body is growing from just hitting arms. Right? So it's like on the surface level, people see that and they fucking freak out, and everybody's murdering my lack of chest development, which is fair. The one thing I think is that it's a difficult issue for people to understand, and I even have a really tough time explaining it to people in person. If you don't have a background in human anatomy, kinesiology, something where you have a rough idea of a lot of the human anatomy and how the body moves, then it's difficult to understand. And it took me a long time to figure it out. So I'm going to try to do a little bit more explaining here. In other videos, I've talked a little bit about what's going on with the ankle, which that's the root of the problem. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the shoulders. And if your hips are out of alignment, think about it. Like if your hips are supposed to sit in a certain position, and then in my case, the right side is forward and up, do you think that the rest of the muscles through your core, your back, your shoulders are all going to be perfectly symmetrical still? No, right? It doesn't make any sense. The hips are like sitting in a misaligned position due to muscle imbalance, due to dysfunction of a joint down the chain, meaning your ankle joint doesn't move correctly. So your body compensates by changing the way you walk, changing the way you run. All of your movements are dysfunctional. The hips inevitably are going to end up being sitting potentially in a misaligned position, which is the case for me. So if that happens, then there's no way that your spine your back muscles, your core muscles, your rib cage, your shoulders are all going to be perfectly symmetrical because they're stacking on top of your hips, which are now out of alignment, right? If you thought about like maybe a really tall building, if you take one of the ground floors or one of the middle floors and you fuck it up or pull one of the blocks out of a Jenga tower, let's say, if you start pulling blocks out here and there, the top gets compromised. No, it's not a good fucking analogy. What I'm trying to say is everything is connected. I hope that that's clear. Okay, and so when you look at my shoulders, you can see, I hope, that this one, this collarbone, is sitting higher than this one. So my left collarbone here is sitting higher than the right one. If you look right at the points here, your sternoclavicular joint, you can see that this one is higher, right? And maybe you can also see that this shoulder, they're not symmetrical. Like the trap here looks smaller than this one, right? This one seems to be longer. This is kind of short and smaller, okay? And also, this shoulder is kind of internally rotated, meaning my shoulder's rotated in more on this side, right? So if you look closely, you can see that there's some imbalance there, okay? I know this is the part that's like next to impossible to explain, but I'm going to try. So your shoulder joint, your collarbone, this bone here, comes out to your shoulder here and connects with the spine of your scapula, the AC joint, acromion clavicular. Yeah, so this is your clavicle, and the acromion, which is part of your shoulder blade. If you Google scapula or shoulder blade, you'll see the spine of the shoulder blade, and then it kind of comes into this bone here. Anyways, if this was my scapula, if this is my shoulder blade, my hand, okay, on this left side, picture that as my shoulder blade sitting on my back. At the shoulder joint, let's say this is the shoulder joint, the top of my fingers here, that top bit of the scapula, let's just say, I'm not going to use any fancy anatomical terms or anything. I'm just going to generalize everything so it makes more sense. The top bony part of my scapula connects with my clavicle. Let's say this hand, my right hand, is the clavicle. Boom, to form the AC joint, the joint at your shoulder here. Okay, or one of the joints. All right, that forms the top of the shoulder capsule. This is what I'm saying. It's like hard to explain in a way where if you don't have some understanding of the anatomy, it's tough. We're going to keep drugging through. Drugging's not a word, but whatever. Anyways, that's the joint here. Now, let's say this is a normal position where your scapula sits in like a little bit of upward rotation, meaning like if you raise your arms up overhead, your shoulder blades move up like this, right? As I raise my arms up, the shoulder blades on my back rotate upwards, okay? Among other movements as well, but they're rotating up, all right? So your shoulder blade, let's say this is a natural position for your shoulder blades to sit in, right? It's going to look something like this. And on top of this left side, we have the clavicle connecting here. Okay, now let's say due to the hips being out of alignment, all right, and the muscles that connect from your hips onto your spine, into your rib cage, onto your scapula, like the lats, originate in your lower back and your pelvis, comes all the way up, attaches on the scapula, and then comes up and inserts in the front of the shoulder, or the intertubicular groove of the humerus, which happens to be in the general vicinity of the front of your shoulder, all right? So if those are out of alignment, then we would expect over time, if this is a chronic, meaning long-term muscle imbalance, that then there's also going to be imbalances in the shoulders, which is what you can see, what I'm trying to visualize to you. If that's the case, then this left shoulder blade, boom, here, is going to be sitting, in my case, downwardly rotated, okay, so it's coming down more than it should, and it's going to sit closer to my spine. So if you imagine the spine is running along here, and then your shoulder blades are on either side of your spine up near the top, okay, and the scapula or the shoulder blades downwardly rotating and retracting, meaning coming closer to the spine, whereas if you squeeze your shoulder blades together or pinch your scapula together, that's going to be bringing your scapula this way, retracting, bringing closer to the midline, to the spine. So this left shoulder blade with the clavicle attached at the shoulder joint here is sitting in downward rotation and retraction, okay? And what that's doing is that if this is normal, and then all of a sudden this shoulder blade here rotates downward, what happens? The clavicle pops up, right? Given that this is a kind of a fixed joint, the AC joint is not like flexible where you can bring the shoulder blade down and the joint moves, the movement is going to come by putting upward pressure on the collarbone. And that's why this collarbone sits higher. So again, normal position, right side sitting normally, or it's not pulled into an imbalanced position the same way the left one is. All right, to begin, it's in a normal position. And then this starts to rotate downward, starts to come closer to the spine. The reaction is going to be, given that this point here, the AC joint, is a fixed point, this isn't going to move, then that's going to put upward force on the collarbone, clavicle. Same thing. Okay, so that's a general explanation of why you would see this imbalance in the front here. Okay, and then what comes with that shoulder blade being downwardly rotated and retracted, if you know anything about anatomy, the muscles that are responsible for downward rotation and retraction are going to be overactive or sitting in tight and short positions because they're over a long time period always sitting in an imbalanced position. So things like the rhomboids, which are responsible for retraction, as well as your mid-trapezius, retraction meaning pulling your shoulder blades back, those are going to be overactive, tight, short, dysfunctional, as well as the lat. The lat is responsible for downward rotation, and so that responsible for depression of your scapula? I think it is, yeah. So that's going to be dysfunctional, and all of that is stemming from the hips or being connected to the hips. And the dysfunction can go both ways. It can go up the chain, meaning from the hips being out of imbalance traveling upwards. It can go from the shoulders being out of balance traveling downwards. I found in my experience it's more so going from the hips upwards, from the foot up to the hips, up to the shoulders. But to tie it all together, and the reason that I'm not able to train chest or back with any intensity or regularity without exacerbating this imbalance that I've described is because the lats are responsible for downward rotation of your scapula. So if I go and do a whole bunch of lat pull downs and that muscle gets tight and more dysfunctional, it pulls that shoulder blade even further into an imbalanced position, given that we're already sitting with some dysfunction, right? If you just have normal shoulder blades, you go train your lats, it's not necessarily going to happen. But given this misalignment already exists, if I go and do something like a whole bunch of rows or lat pull downs or any kind of back movement, it's going to pull that imbalance further. It's going to pull that scapula further out of position. Same thing with the chest, because your pec minor, which attaches on your shoulder blade, your scapula, is also a downward rotator. So any type of movement that involves protracting of the shoulder blades forward, any kind of pressing movement, also due to the imbalance in the shoulders and the internal rotation of the pec here, anything that's targeting this left pec is extremely problematic. And that internal rotation and the position that the shoulder sits in gets worse and worse. So if I go and hit a really aggressive chest session, I'll start to get numbness in my face probably halfway through. I mean, I haven't done it in years, but this is what used to happen when it was first starting to become a problem and I didn't really understand what was going on. I was like still kind of training here and there, but I kept getting these numbness issues in my face, which is like something fairly alarming that I don't think you should just train through. No pain, no gain. Yeah, that's the problem, and that's why I can't go and effectively train. I could do a set of push-ups right now and be okay, but I would feel that imbalance starting to get worse. And that's why the overhead tricep extensions are such a good movement, because it's the opposite of downward rotation, which is a problem, especially for this side. You're in upward rotation. Okay, so it's actually stretching out a lot of those chronically tight, short muscles that are leading to dysfunction. That's why I've found that I can actually push that exercise with intensity, a lot of intensity, and not exacerbate the muscle imbalances to a point where from one session to the next they're compounding, getting worse and worse, and I'm just making the problem. I'm just living in pain and everything's getting, it's not worth it. And like, I don't know, you're gonna absolutely snap yourself at some point. I mean, I would draw the line where you start to get nerve issues and numbness. And the reason that happens, I don't fully understand, but the further those muscle imbalances get pushed, let's say from doing a bunch of lat training or doing a bunch of chest training or doing a bunch of retractions, a bunch of rhomboid training, pulling that shoulder blade further out of position, as you tax those muscles and they get tight and everything pulls, then eventually that shoulder blade kind of hits like a limit where it's starting to press on a nerve, or some of the nerve things in here are getting messed with, and then I start to get the numbness and tingling up into the side of my neck and my face and everything. So if you think about it, like if my shoulder's already kind of sitting out of position and I go and do a bunch of stuff to tighten and train the muscles that are already kind of pulled out of position. So then the shoulder gets pulled further and further and further into an imbalanced position. You can imagine how that's going to start to cause problems, not only on the joints, but on the nerves, on everything, right? And so it's something that I've learned to manage, and why I do all the stretching and mobility beforehand, before I go and train, so that I can actually train. And so this is the issue that I'm running into, is that particularly with short form social media, I'm like trying to share what I'm doing in little tidbits. You know, like if I made a video like this, right, even with some visuals and stuff, and like tried to condense it down, it's too like it's like too difficult. I've made a couple videos. I have a couple posts pinned on my page that roughly describe the issue, but it's so technical and dense and like difficult to explain, and that even in like a context like this where I have 10 minutes to talk about it, it's still probably hard for a lot of people to fully grasp what's going on. So that's why it's kind of an issue. And yeah, I was reading through a lot of the comments and stuff, and a lot of it makes sense. I get where people are coming from, but a lot of people like don't believe it. They don't understand what's going on. They're like, yeah, and I'm just like not really sure what the route is, because it's like if I try to make more content explaining, it's going to get no views in the short form because people's attention span is so short. And it's going to be hard to condense it. And I've already got a couple general posts where if somebody really cares, they could look and they could see. May not fully understand it, but I outline how I broke the ankle, it healed incorrectly, now everything's misaligned, and due to those limitations, I can only do arms and legs, and in a limited capacity with only certain exercises, and needing to do all this mobility work to manage the imbalances. It's a bit of a wacky journey, but the message, like with those posts and then what I'm trying to put out, is like, for a long time I just stopped training, like when all this like kind of set in, maybe in my like early to mid 20s, and I just didn't work out for a few years. So I was like, oh, this is fucked. And I was just trying to like find people to help me, and like going and seeing all these different people, trying all these different methods to improve the situation. And really the ankle is the root of the problem. So if you can't correct that movement dysfunction there, then it's hard for anything up the chain to adjust. And unfortunately it's proved to be a stubborn thing to improve, because it was broken and then healed incorrectly. It's been so many years. Now it's like kind of ingrained to move in a dysfunctional way. Although I have seen some improvements in its mobility from doing all the jumping lunges and stuff. So I think a lot of it, when you have a joint that's dysfunctional, you don't only have a limited amount of mobility, but you also have a lack of strength and stability. The two things combined. So it's not always just like, okay, you need to stretch and create this. Usually there's some lack of range of motion due to a lack of stability and strength. That's what I've kind of found. It's not usually like, okay, you have tight quads, stretch your quads. Well, like, why are your quads tight, right? Like stretching is probably going to be part of the solution, but that may not address the root issue. Or if you have a tight chest, stretch your chest. Go, why does the chest keep getting tight over and over again? Right? Maybe there's something else in your shoulders, your back, your posture that's leading to that chest tightness and dysfunction. Yeah, so that's kind of what's top of mind. I think on the short form, like, I think it's kind of hopeless for like people to actually fully understand, and some people do. Hey, buddy, how long have you been standing there? I'm pretty much done. It's okay. This is episode 40 of the Road to 18-inch Arms.
Who's this stud? Are we rolling?
Yeah, we're rolling, man.
Who's this stud shirtless?
Yeah, I mean, it attracted a lot of homeless-looking characters like to join in.
Stay away.
Fortunately, it's never hot females. It's usually just creepy dudes.
Yeah,
All right. What's going on? All right. This will be set 4. First set is with 100-pound dumbbell, and then I go 105, and then I go 110. Those are the first 3 sets. And the fourth one I'll also do 110. And for the fifth one, I'll probably go down back to the 105, because the first set with the 110, I got 11 reps. This set I'll shoot for 11, I might get 10. That's kind of like the bottom of the rep range that I want to be in. So then for the set afterwards, I'll drop a little bit of weight, because I don't really want to get less than 10 reps for arms. And we're doing fast, explosive tempo, but enough control. And in a previous video, I did the 110 for 13 reps, but that's a good example of like sacrificing your form to get more reps. So like in this case, a little bit more of a fuller range of motion, a bit of a deeper stretch at the bottom, a bit more of an extension at the top. You lose some reps, but it's that same thing where, like, are you adding reps because you're getting stronger, or are you adding reps because you're sacrificing your form? So it's that fine line. So I adjusted to make my form a little bit better, so naturally the reps go down a little bit. Let's do it. Hey, so that's step 4, 10 reps. So we'll go down to the 105 for the 5th set. And do a similar thing with the curls, where I'm started first set 45 pounds for the hammers, and the second set 47 and a half, third set 50s. We'll do a fourth set with the 50s as well. We're getting like 10 to 12 reps. And then maybe the fifth set I'll drop, similar kind of thing. So I'll rest probably about 2 to 3 minutes, and then I'll do the set of hammers. Okay, curls. So the thing I'm trying to focus on is to not swing, but also be fast and explosive, which is hard to do. So we're going 50s, 10 to 12 reps. Ooh. A little couple of leg gyrations in there. That's a good set. Okay, workout. Day 40 is in the books. Some concluding thoughts. It's been about an hour. I had a post-workout meal, a salad, some trail mix in there. Not super high protein, but I'll probably eat one more meal tonight. Emphasize the protein a little bit more, maybe. I think it's the end of the world. That workout, the weight has been pretty plateaued for a couple weeks. Yeah, I'm kind of unsure if I should just keep doing it the same, because if you're familiar with my thoughts on training, is that you shouldn't just keep showing up doing the same shit over and over, expecting yourself to grow. You gotta do something different. But on the flip side, there's some degree of patience needed where, maybe for a few weeks or a month, you're kind of stuck, but you're not going to add a rep, or you're not going to up the weight every single week. So it's kind of a balance, and maybe if it's been 2 or 3 months, then for sure, I think you need to do something different. But yeah, that session is pretty plateaued, and I feel like I'm getting any of the growth that I may be getting at this point is from the other day, the psycho sets, the demonic drop set day, which will be tomorrow. And I feel like I'm making progress there. After that session, the next day, I feel when I look in the mirror and I kind of assess my body, I feel like it's leading to some muscle growth. But it could be the combination of the fast and heavy, what I did today, with the slow, controlled, extreme intensity drop set day, which will be tomorrow. Those are kind of the two themes I'm working with, stacking them back to back. And then we rest the arms by hitting legs, then repeat. Yeah. So I think I'm just going to stick with it and just keep trying for a little while longer to add an additional rep. Do the lifts. For a while there, the previous month or two, the weight and reps were going up every workout. I knew it wasn't sustainable. With the overhead triceps, I was at like 85, maybe 90 pound dumbbell, like at the beginning of July. So like 2 months ago-ish. And I swear every workout I would be able to do an extra rep, and then eventually progress the weight once the reps get over 15. And it obviously wasn't sustainable. And now the past, I would say a couple weeks, maybe even a month, I've been kind of stuck where I'm getting like 16 reps with the 100, and then 14 to 15 with the 105, and then 10, 11, 12 with the 110. So this is the way it is. We'll do it for a little longer, a couple more sessions at least, maybe a couple more weeks, and then reassess. If it's still not progressing, then I'm gonna do something different with it. But I'm excited for tomorrow because those days, the psycho set days, I feel like I'm really growing, and I feel like there's more of a margin for improvement, meaning I can push with more intensity and lead to more growth, because on each, you're doing a whole bunch of reps and a whole bunch of drops. The line of like, can I do one more, is a bit broader, meaning like slow controlled tempo, the first set, I may be able to gut out an extra half rep. And then each drop, am I really maxing the intensity, or could I push for another extra rep? That margin is bigger. Whereas on a day like this, it's like I just either have an extra rep in me or I don't. It's not really like a mental, like fire myself up, get the pre-workout, get the EDM. But like if I don't have it, I don't got it, right? Even if I max the intensity, something physically, I'm not gonna push that heavy ass weight for an extra rep. So I feel like that the psycho set drop set day, I'm able to, that margin is broader, and I can, if I bring further and further levels of intensity, I can put the stimulus, or make it so the stimulus on my muscles is more and more extreme and leading to more growth. So thanks for watching. Anybody that, if you're watching all of these and following along and leaving a like or a comment, I really appreciate it. And we're just going to keep going. Day 40. We'll see how long it's going to take for me to get there, and we're close to the 18 inches. And yeah, soon enough, hopefully, one way or another, it's going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to take, but hope you have a great day. And we will see you probably in a few days for another episode of the Road to 18 Inch Arms.